Good morning, students. Today I am going to start the first chapter of geography, that is resources and development. This is a very important chapter. Students, we use food, clothing, shelter, and other necessities to make life comfortable. But have you ever thought where do they come from? They come from resources. Resources of all kinds, natural and man made, help us to live the life that we live. So, resources are a vital part of our life. So, let us begin the chapter with the meaning of resources. So, everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable, can be termed as resources. So, everything available in our environment which is technologically accessible means the technology needed to use the resources must be available so that we can extract it and make use of it. Economically feasible means we have enough money to use the technology to extract and make use of it. Culturally acceptable means things that are allowed to be observed or practiced without any objection or hindrances. So suppose in a particular area some resources deposit is there, but we do not have the technology to make use of that resources, then it is of no use. If we have the technology but do not have sufficient money to invest, then also there is a problem. If both technology and money is there, but the people of that area do not allow to set up a mine became hindrances, then also it is of no use. So these three things goes hand in hand. There is an interdependent relationship between human beings, technology and institutions. And human beings interact with nature through technology and create institutions to accelerate their economic development. So human beings themselves are the essential components. Let us go for the classification of resources. The resources are classified as natural resources and human-made resources. Natural resources that we get it from nature, and human resources which are made by humans by modifying natural resources. Example, building, steel, etc. And again the natural resources is subdivided into renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources again subdivided into continuous or flow or biological. Then biological resources again subdivided into natural vegetation and wildlife. Then non-renewable resources is subdivided into recyclable and non-recyclable. Then come to the human resources. Human resources is categorized as structures and institutions, quantity and quality. Let us go for the detailed explanation of the classification of resources. On the basis of origin. On the basis of origin, resources are classified as biotic resources and abiotic resources. So biotic resources. These resources are obtained from biosphere and have life. Example, human beings, livestock, flora, fauna, etc. Yes, coal and petroleum may be considered as biotic resources as they are formed by decaying of life forms. Then the abiotic resources. These resources are composed of non-living things. Example, soil, rocks, metals and winds, etc. On the basis of exhaustibility or limitation of use, resources are classified as renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Then renewable resources, the resources which can be renewed or reproduced by physical, chemical or mechanical processes are known as renewable or replenishable resources. Example, solar energy, wind energy, forest, water, wildlife, etc. It can be further subdivided into two forms. One is flow or continuous resources. These resources can be used and replenished at the same time. It doesn't remain in one location and moves about because of the natural actions in the physical environment. Example, running water, solar radiation, wind and tides. And other is the biological resources. These resources are formed by biological processes. It is further divided into two types, natural vegetation and wildlife. Let us move to the non-renewable resources. These resources are formed through long geological time period and cannot be renewed. Example, minerals, metals and fossil fuels. These resources may be further divided recyclable and non-recyclable. Recyclable metals can be recycled by technological application, so they are recyclable. Non-recyclable fossil fuels burn readily and cannot be recycled, so they are non-recyclable. So on the basis of ownership, resources are categorized as individual resources, community-owned resources, national resources and international resources. Then individual resources. These resources are owned privately by individual. Example, plantation, pasture lands, farmland, water in pool, well, pond, our residential plots, land. These are called the individual resources. Community owned resources. These resources are accessible to all the members of a particular community. Example, the grazing grounds, the burial grounds, ponds in village, public parks, community halls. That means that particular resources is only used by the people of that particular community. Then the national resources. These resources are under the control of nation or country. That means resources are all the resources that belongs to a nation. Example, roads, canals, railways, etc. Minerals, water resources, forest, wildlife. Then land within the political boundaries, territorial water and the resources within. The term territorial water refers to the oceanic area up to 12 nautical miles, that is 9.2 km from the coast. So the country has legal power to acquire even private property for public good. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land. Then the international resources. These resources are owned and regulated by international institutions. Example, open sea used for peaceful navigation, open sky for the flight movement, etc. The oceanic resource beyond 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone belong to the open sea. So India had to obtain the right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of Indian Ocean from an area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zone. Then on the basis of the status of development, resources is categorized as potential resources, developed resources, stock and reserves. First, the potential resources. The resources are found in a region in abundance but have not been developed properly. Example, solar and wind energy in Gujarat and Rajasthan, vast tidal waves in the coast of India. These things are there, these resources are abundantly, plentifully available in this particular region, but it is not developed either because of lack of technology or non-economical feasibility. Then the developed resources. These resources are surveyed and quantified for utilization through available technology. Example, coal, petroleum, etc. Availability of technology and level of accessibility decide the quality of developed resources. So, the development of resources depends on technology and the level of their feasibility. Then, stock. These resources have potential to satisfy human need. The required technical knowledge to use them is not developed. This example, hydrogen and oxygen in water can be a rich source of energy, but technical know-how for this purpose is not available. It is there, but it is yet to know with which technology that we are going to develop that particular resource. Then the reserve. These are specific stocks for which appropriate technology know-how is available. but exploration is not started. We need to explore it, how to use it for the present generation and for the future generation. Example, river water for hydel energy or forest are reserves but still has limited exploration. Some and other we try to reserve it for the future generation. Thus the water in the dams is a reserve which can be used in the future. Then let us go for the development of resources. Resources are free gift of natures, but their overutilization has led so many problems problem created by indiscriminate use of resources by man. Everything that should be used in a judicious way. If we are not going use it in a judicious way, we may face lot of problems like resource depletion for satisfying the greed of few individuals. Then unequal resource distribution which create accumulation of resources in few hands, due to which society is divided into rich and poor. The third, global ecological crisis. Example, global warming, ozone layer depletion and environmental pollution and land degradation because of the indiscriminate use of resources. So, a fair distribution of resources therefore is essential for sustained quality of life and global peace. This can be achieved through proper planning. Then sustainability of development. Sustainable development. Sustainable development means development should take place without damaging the environment. In other words, the present pace of development should not compromise with the needs of the future generation. For this, resources planning should be done. So the concept of sustainable development was first formulated in June 1992 at the first United Conference of Environment and Development, that is UNCED, held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. The summit supported global forest principles and adopted Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development in the 21st century. The objective of Agenda 21 are to eliminate poverty, hunger, sickness, illiteracy and reduce deterioration of the environment. Then resource planning in India. So resource planning is a technique or skill of proper utilization of resources. Means how do we utilize the resources so that it will fulfill the needs of the present generation as well as the future generation. So resource planning means identification and quantification. So available resources along with their development. So there are 3 stages of resource planning. So first is identification and listing of the resources. So identification and inventory of resources across the region of the country. This involves surveying, mapping and qualitative and quantitative estimation and measurement of the resources. That means first we have to identify where the resources is. Then we can go for mapping it. How many area it was there, and what will be the quality and quantity of that particular resources. Then evolving a planning structure endowed with appropriate technology, skill and institutional setup for implementing resource development plans. So we should go for identifying which technology and how much skills and institutional setup will be there to extract that resources and to set up the proper planning for use of that particular resources. And third, matching the resource development plans with the overall national development plans. So India has made concrete efforts for achieving the goals of resource planning right from the first 5-year plan launched after independence. So India followed the policy of resource planning from the very first 5-year plan rightly after the independence. The availability of resource alone cannot begin. The process of development, necessary technology and institutional setup are also required. The history of colonization reveals that rich resources in colonies were the main attraction of the foreign invaders. We are under the British because of these resources that is there in our country. It was primarily the higher level of technological development of the colonized countries that helped them to exploit resources of other regions and establish their supremacy over the colonies. Therefore, resources can contribute to development only when they are accompanied by appropriate technological development and institutional changes. So India has experienced all these in different phases of colonization. Therefore, in India, development in general and resource development in a particular doesn't only involve the availability of resources, but also the technology, quality of human resources, and the history of experience of the people. Then the conservation of resources. Irrational consumption and overutilization of resources may lead to the socio-economic and environmental problems. So resource conservation at various levels is important to overcome these problems. In 1987, the Brundtland Commission report extensively mentioned the necessity of resources conservation and advocate the concept of sustainable development for this purpose. So planned use of resource in order to meet the present needs and to store a part of for the future generation is called resource conservation. So it is necessary because many resources are non-renewable and exhaustible. If we conserve them, we can use them for a longer period of time. Second, conservation of resources help us to reduce wastage. It will help in economic progress. Third, resource conservation help us to protect the environment. So Gandhiji's voiced his concern about the resource conservation when he said, "There is enough for everybody's need, but not for anybody's greed." He was against mass production and wanted to replace it with the production by the masses. According to Gandhiji, there is enough for everybody's need, not for anybody's greed. It cannot fulfill the greeds of the human beings. The greedy and selfish individuals and the exploitative nature of modern technology are the root cause of the resource depletion. So he was against the mass production and wanted to replace it with the production by masses. He doesn't want a production in mass. He wants people of each and every level should be engaged themselves for the production. So this is all for today's video. We'll meet you in the next videos. Thank you and have a great day.